Hi, good day again. Recently, a few weeks back, we spoke about animation foundations, where we use the animation player to create different types of animation. And recently, we spoke about sprite frames. And in sprite frames, we actually animated some sprites, which is why it's also known as animated sprite 2D. Today I want to talk about something called AnimationTree. It's a little more complex topic, so I will have to take my time and go through piece by piece and probably many different parts how to use the animation tree. Today we'll just be dealing with the BlendSpace1D in the animation tree, and as the weeks go by we'll graduate into different types of animation tree features, maybe not consecutively, but let's just start from the BlendSpace1D for now. Okay, so let me just close off this scene here. Let's start a new scene, a Node 2D scene, and let's just give it a name, BlendSpace1D. And in this BlendSpace1D, let's add a sprite 2D. Do we have it here? Yes, we do. And let's also add an animation player. Yes, we need an animation player as well. We can put it under the BlendSpace1D rather than under the sprite 2D. We're going to put everything under the root node. And after this, I just want to add something called an animation tree. And here it is, animation tree. This is what we're going to be using today. And of course, as I said, put everything under the root node. Great. An animation tree is complaining here. We'll deal with that in a second. Okay, and let me just close off this script here. And let's save our BlendSpace1D. Control S. We'll just leave it with the same name. Now what we're going to do here, we have to populate our animation player with different types of animations. Right now it's empty, but we have to create our own animations. And because I want to illustrate movement from an idle position to a walk position to a run position and back, I'm going to look for some new sprites that we can use that has those specific positions. So I already downloaded them. Let me just open my download folder. And as you can see, I got them from GameArt 2D. Let me just open this out. And there was one called Flatboy. Flatboy has all these different positions here. We have dead, idle, jump, run, walk. So this is perfect for me. I'm just going to create a new folder in our res here, and let's just give it a descriptive name so we can find it. Let's call it 1D maybe. 1D sprites. And let's just transfer across some of these. As I said, we want the idle, so let's transfer all the idles. Start from idle 1 all the way down to idle 15. We don't have to do all, but I want a more smooth transition in the animations, so I'm going to stick to what they have. Let's drag it across, and the little arrow is supposed to show up here when it's done. Nice. And let me just get the run and walk as well. So run and walk are right next to each other, so I'm just going to shift select all of those and drag them across, and I can close this for now. The important window is closed, so let's see. Yes, we have run and we have walk. So we're going to use these to create different animations in the animation player, which we did in a few videos ago. Okay, so we already know how to use the animation player. Let's go into animation here, and I'm going to create my different animations. So let's click animation, new, and let's do idle. Let's do walk, and let's do run. Don't forget, when we add in the frames, to choose the correct positions here. So I'm going to start with idle, and just as a little refresher, remember we're going to drag in the different positions of the sprite that we want. So I'm going to click sprite up here, sprite2D on the top left hand side, and I'm going to drag these across to the texture on the top right hand corner here, and click the little key icon like we did so many weeks ago. So let's start, and I'm going to click the key, and it's going to ask me if I want to add the texture, and I just click create. So now we have a timeline here, and as you can notice here, it goes from 0 to 1, and the timeline is 1 second long. I'm going to do it at every 0.1 second, and I have 15 idle sprites and 15 run and 15 walk. So I'm going to change this to 1.4 because we start at 0. So 1.4 is perfect for 15 sprites if I'm doing 0.01. And I'm going to control and scroll in here to widen these out. Great. So now I can see my timeline, and I could simply just type in 0.1 here to get a precise point and enter, or I can just click where on the timeline I want, and I can, if I want to be more precise afterwards, I can go and fix each one separately by changing the value here. But I'm just going to click and drag for the sake of speed. So let's go. And I'm just gonna add another one for backward walking, because in Blend1D, in Space Blend1D, we're gonna just move in one direction, forward and possibly backward. It's on one, I should say one axis for now. It's on the x-axis. So I just want to add a backward walking, but I don't have any specific sprites for backward walking. So I'm going to take the sprites from the walk and go backwards. So let's just add a new animation. Call it walk backwards. And let's do the same. That's it, we're done. There's one more thing I want to do. I want to change the position of all the animations to not centered, so that our little flat boy is on the top left hand corner of the screen. Let's make sure that it's the same for the rest. Yeah, so great. By switching it for 1, it's just the sprite2D parameter that we changed here, so it worked for all the sprites that we used. And let's save that. Let's make sure they're working. The walk is working. Yes, it is. Let's put it on loop so it doesn't stop. Let's switch to idle. he's moving up and down. Make sure that's in loop as well. Run, loop. There we go. And is it walk backwards? Let's loop that as well. So I believe I have all looped. Great. So let's save this and we'll move on to the next part. Alright, in this part, let's get rid of this warning here. It says no root animation node. Let's click animation tree, and you notice at the bottom here there's a next window that's opened up. We're going to the right hand window, the inspector, and where it says tree root, we're going to click that. And as I said, we're going to deal with the animation node BlendSpace1D, so let's choose that for now. The other concept we'll deal with another time, but basically the BlendSpace1D is for when we're moving in one axis, one direction, and more or less using one parameter like speed alone or something like that. So let's use that. We're using the advanced expression as is. The animation player, we have to assign the animation player to it. So let's just click that, and the name of our animation player is AnimationPlayer, as seen in the left hand side here. It shows up here as well. Whatever we name it here, it's going to be the name here. Click OK. And you can just click parameters just to see what's going on here. These are what we call blend positions. In our case, if you notice, there's a graph that opens up here. And the graph only has an x-axis, as in you can only move on the x-axis. You can't, if I move my mouse up, I'm clicking and moving, it doesn't move in any other axis. So this is what we're going to be using. We're just moving along the x-axis, so that when we move this boy here, he walks along the x-axis. For this video, I'm not going to let him move across the screen for now, but I'm going to show the movements, so we have an idea of how BlendSpace1D works in this case. One thing I want to change here is continuous to discrete, but you can try out different methods. I prefer discrete. Even capture looks the same way. And if you notice here, this button is to set the blending position. That's the crosshairs that you see here. This one is to select and move points. You can actually use this one for the next part. And wherever you click, you right click and you'll get add animation, and that's where we're going to put our animations. Or we can use the create points, and when we normal left click, it's going to work there. So let's begin. For position 0, we have this enable snap. If we take off the enable snap, wherever we put the animation, let's start with the idle animation, it's going to stay there. If we put back the grid now, you see it sits wherever. But if we use the snapping, use select and move points, we can actually select this point and delete it using the little bin icon here. Or we could have just moved it. Let's type Ctrl Z to put it back, and let's move it across. If you notice now, because we have the snapping on, it snaps to the minor axes here. So we want it at 0, 0, let's leave it there. Let's move on and add some other points. We can put a 0.05 as another point, but I'm going to raise this to 2. And wherever 1 is, that's around here, I believe. Add animation. We're going to start walking here, and at the end, we want to add run. That looks a little off, but you can tell. If we click the blend position, let's just move this across. That's 0.9, as you can see in the parameters here. So I have it in the wrong spot. Let me just move this across. Let's put the crosshairs back at 0. And here I just want to use the backwards, the move backwards, which is the last animation that we made. Let's just add it here, add animation, and walk backwards. And that's it. Let's save this. Let's click the crosshairs. I want you to see what's going on. It's like a slider scale now. If we move to the right, when we move to the center around there, he starts walking. And this is the crux of walking, the center point of where the walking animation plays, and then if we go at next 0.5, it will change to running. And this is where the center of running is. If we go back to idle, the idles anywhere in between 0.5 and minus 0.5, he will be on idle. And if we move back to the -1 position, you can see he's walking backwards. So basically we want to use these values on the slider scale to effect some sort of blend. But initially the code we're going to write, there's not going to be a blend in it, it's just going to be direct to 0, 1, 2, maybe -1. So let's just save this. Okay, so let's go to root node and create a script, extend node 2D. And if you remember from one of our past tutorials where we moved items with keystrokes, I'm going to use just the literal keystrokes for now because I only want to use forward and backward, and probably some other keystroke to demonstrate the actual blending. Now let me start here. I'm going to create a function called moveByKey. And here we want to check movement and maybe running, so we're going to use shift and right key or something like that. So let's put if, remember we're just using the key presses for now, so if input dot is key pressed, that's the second option here, and we're going to use key underscore right. There it is. So if the input is the right key, the right arrow in this case, we want the animation to start moving as if it's walking forward. We're going to reference the animation tree. So let's drag it across. Dot set. This is how we do this. And across on the right hand side here, animation tree. Let's just click off and click back one. We want to bring in the blend position, so we can click this and drag across, or we can just look at the name here, parameters blend position. I'm just going to drag this across and put it in here. Take off one of those quotes. And how this works, if we hover over the set, we'll see you have to have the property, which is a string name and a value. So let's just put a comma, and our value will be, if we're pressing right, we want him to walk, which will be, if you look down in the graph here, the animation tree graph, that will be at the position 1, at the blend value 1. So let's leave that there. Let's save. And in order to see this work, we have to run it through a process or physics process. Let's do a physics process for now. And let's just type in the function name, moveByKey. There we go. So basically this is working already. Let's save this and let's just run it. Remember, we have to run the specific scene. And if I press right, I have to select the screen. He's walking, but nothing happens when I release the right button. So we have to write code for all these things. Let's close this. Okay, in order to avoid the animation tree staying at 1.0, we can always reset it at 0.0. But let's make this a little more versatile. And at the top here, let's just make a variable for blend value. And we're going to use this instead of this long animation tree statement here. And let's take this animation tree statement here and let's just put it by itself. So let's cut this here, Control X. And we'll fix that in a bit. Let's just make some space here and paste it here. So anytime we make a change inside the moveByKey function, whatever changes are made to the blend value, which we are going to substitute here now, whatever changes are made is going to affect the AnimationTree.set property and it's going to update it. Of course it's complaining because we have nothing after the if statement, so Remember, we want to check for if we're pressing something else to make the character run. So let's also check for shift. So if input, or we can just copy this. Okay, so let's just copy this here. And let's just paste it here. And we're going to say if key is shift. So when you're pressing right, if you press shift as well, doesn't matter which shift. You can use the left shift or the right shift. We're going to change our blend value. We're going to change our blend value to 2 because shift and right key is our signal to start running. Else, if it's just the right key alone, the blend value will just be 1. Great. And let's save this. And notice an error here. That's because I didn't indent this properly here. So let's just put a tab here. Great. So that updates. Let's save and test. So if I press right, and just click in here to select it. If I press right, he walks, and if I press shift for the right, he runs. So code is working. Since we already got it here, let's just go back a bit and let's say else if. We're going to put the input for walking backwards. We will make that the left key. Control C, Control V. If key left, we're just going to make the blend value -1. And that's as simple as it is. Only thing here is we're not actually showing real blends because we're actually jumping from 0 to 1 to 2. Let's save this. We didn't check to see if our 0 is working. That's the idle. If I press the right button, he walks forward. If I press shift, he runs. If I press backwards, he walks backwards. But he's not resetting to 0. So we have to put some code to reset him to 0. So right off the bat, we can just put else here. And else the blend value, if none of those other things are being pressed, the blend value will be 0.0. And that's supposed to reset the movement. If I press right, walk, shift right. If I release, he stops. So idle is working, and if I press backwards, he walks backwards, and if I release, he stops. So that works perfectly. Let's close this. If I open this again, let's just check this. I just want to show you. If I press right, he jumps straight into the walking. If I release, he jumps straight into idle. But there's no real blending, and this is called a blend space. So we have to apply blending. Remember I said it's like a slider. If we look at the animation tree at the bottom here, when we look at the slider, we're getting an error here. I'm pretty sure we're getting a warning. I'm pretty sure that's because we're not using delta. So let's just put an underscore before the delta. And that warning should go away. Let's see. Let's run this. Yeah, the warning is gone. Great. If you notice in our code, we're actually setting directly to 2 or 1, -1 or 0. And we're not actually sliding across the scale. In this particular case, it's kind of hard to create a slider value because we don't have any intermediate animations that we can say, okay, let's at 1.5 let's have a intermediate type looking where he's looking like he's walking into running. This is where the power of the space blends come in. I'm going to add some code where we're just going to use the space bar for movement. We're just going to ignore the backward walking for now because we want to go from idle to walk to run, but we're going to use spacebar. As you continuously hold spacebar, the character slowly speeds up and runs, and you will actually see the difference because we will be using a slider scale by using lerp. So rather than go directly from 0 to 1 and 1 to 2, we're going to go 0 to 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 and so on. When it hits 0.5, it's going to automatically transition into walking, and when it hits 1.5, it's going to automatically transition into running. And maybe write some code, just a little bit of code for slowing down as well. Okay, so after this else if here, I'm going to add another else if just under that, and here we're going to use the spacebar. I should just put some sort of indication. Great. Oops. Nice. So we know where we're starting. And under this else if, we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to use spacebar. And if key is space, we're going to write a code to loop the blend value. So let's just say our blend value would be, rather than adding a direct blend value, we're going to use lerp. If you remember, lerp is for gradual movement from one value to another using some sort of weight, which is a jump increment. If you notice here, from variant to variant and a weight. So our from variant will be our initial blend value. So let's just type that in. What we're going to do, we're going to create a, go to top and create another variable called current value. Or current blend. It doesn't matter. Or current blend value if you prefer. And let's just set that to 0 because our starting will always be at 0. So back into loop now. We want our starting position, which will be the current value. And in this case, we want to move all the way up to 2, which will be our ending value, where run is situated on the timeline, where run is situated on the animation tree. And let's give it a weight of, I tried many different weights, and the only way you can see this well is if we put 0.01. You can put 0.02, 0.05, you can even put 0.5, but it moves too quickly and you don't see the actual transition. I'm just going to put at 0.01 for now. And of course we have to update the current value because this current value is only 0 as it's initialized at the top here now. So every time there's some sort of movement, we have to update the current value to the last blend value which we calculated. Right above here, this blend value is a new value that we're setting the current value to. So every time we run this, the blend values change from the current value to somewhere, to some increment 0.01 towards the final value of 2, and that new blend value will be used to update the current value, and it's going to check to see if we're still pressing key space here, and it's going to update that. So let's try that and see if it works. Save and run. Okay, so everything else is working. Normal shift and arrow and back. But now let's press spacebar and see what happens. He's walking and now he's running. And all I have done is press spacebar. There's another way to see this working. You can go into the left hand side here where it says remote under the scene. And in the remote, open out BlendSpace1D and click the animation tree, and on the right hand side here you'll see blend position parameters. This is what we're going to look to see real-time movement of our values. Let me go back down here and open this screen here, game screen. So let's try this again. It's selected. You can keep your eyes on the blend position here. Let's press spacebar, and you can see it's gradually going up, and he's running. If you release, there's no gradual slowing down. And of course I'm seeing some error there. He's not speeding up like he did the first time. On this else here, let's take this blend value and we're going to loop that back down. So let's just copy this. And in this case, we're going to loop back down to 0.0. So we're going backwards. And let's do the same thing. The current value will be equal to the blend value. When we release the spacebar now, it's supposed to loop back down. So let's save this and run. Let's go into remote and click the animation tree so we can see what's going on in the blend position. Let's select the game screen. If we just press forward, you can see it goes straight to 1. Spacing forward straight to 2. Backwards -1. If you press spacebar, it gradually goes up to almost 2.0, and if I release, it's going to gradually go back down. So you look at the animation, you can see he walks and he runs. So this is the power of the BlendSpace1D in this case. You have an actual blending of the different animation movements. If I release, you'll see he's just going to gradually slow down to a walk and then halt to his idle position. And that's the power of the BlendSpace1D in our animation tree. Of course, BlendSpace2D and the other blend spaces have similar effects, but we'll get to that another time. There's one other thing I want to add here. In our animation, we're walking backwards, but what if we don't want to walk backwards? We can just flip the horizontal value of the sprite 2D. For example, if we're going backwards here now, rather than use the minus blend value, we can still use the positive value, so we don't actually need an animation for the backward walk because we're not going to walk backwards. And we do something called, we're going to flip the sprite 2D. So let's drag across the sprite 2D here and type dot flip and h_h for the horizontal, and says that's true. There's only one problem with this. Once it's flipped, it stays flipped. So let's run it and you'll see what I'm talking about. See, run. So I'm walking forward. Let's look inside here. I'm walking forward, and if I turn around, he turns around and walks the other way. Now if you notice, the sprites were made sort of wide, and I think that's because there's a dead position where he's supposed to fall forward, and that's why there's this big wide space. So this is not the ideal sprite for this moving backwards because he jumps from the left to the right. When you're using that flip H, of course when you're going to move forward again, you have to reset it. So let's do a sprite 2D flip H, Control C, and at the top here where he's moving forward, we have to set it back to false. But this is just an illustration. Let's just save this for now and run. So as you can see, let me select the window again. As you can see, if I move forward, he's moving forward. If I move backwards, he's moving backwards. If I release, he's going to stay as is until I run the other way, because I didn't put the flip on the normal walk. I put it on the run. So of course, if you want to fix that and you have a proper sprite 2D that doesn't have this big space, you flip the horizontal here as well back to false. I hope this was informative. I hope it gave you some sort of understanding of how the animation tree works. It's a bit complicated. The first time I saw it, I was confused as hell. So I don't know if you're the same or if you pick up better than I do. But as we go along, we'll speak about the other parts of the animation tree. It may not be the next video, but above here, as you can see, we have all these different options. We can use the BlendSpace2D and the State Machine. The State Machine is widely used as well. So see you in the next one.